underachieving. Bradley Beal at $4 million, which would be the minimum, or maybe they can give him the biannual, I'm not sure. Whatever it is, all of a sudden there's a whole different value proposition. But I'm sure there's going to be other people bidding for Bradley Beal. That said, if Bradley Beal had a starting level role sitting there with the Clippers to go to, that would be compelling. And one wonders if the Clippers if they are not uncertain about Bradley Beal's intentions by making this trade contest.
Yeah, from the moment this trade happened, the only logical thing you could look at was that Bradley Beal would wind up with the Clippers with John Collins, and they would get markedly better as a result, because Clippers are trying to compete next year. While John Collins and Norman Powell are similar players, I think, in value, which is why they ended up getting swapped for each other, they aren't similar players in terms of fit. And when you look at this Clippers roster, they right now basically only have James Harden who can do anything with the ball. So Bradley Beal would obviously slot right in there, play a huge role for them. I think the reason we've been waiting to see where Bradley Beal will go and when this buyout process will start is because there hasn't been any clarity on where he'll land. And I think that's been part of what the holdup has been. And ironically, one of the other places that has been rumored as a place for him to land was Miami. And with Miami getting Norman Powell in this deal, on top of the fact that the Clippers open up this spot at shooting guard, you certainly wouldn't think Miami's an option for Brad Beal anymore either. So all that points to the Clippers winding up with Beal, who I think is similar player to Norman Powell and John Collins in the same deal. Pretty good return for that.
Well, it's a great situation for Beal. He's going to have to give back about $14 million on the buyout to make the math work for the Suns. He won't make that up in year one, but I assume it'd probably be like a 1+1, 2-year deal with a player option, that sort of a thing. Have a chance to more than make it up next year and to be put into a situation where he's got a starting role on a competitive team, a team that certainly expects to be back in the playoffs. I think there's some family ties for him in LA. Certainly a lot of NBA players enjoy Los Angeles, and if he's moving his family, I'm sure there'd be some appeal there. And then John Collins to me is really interesting. I'm not sure that he starts. To me, it makes a lot of sense to have him paired with Brook Lopez as often as possible. Lopez obviously is not a role man. He's a guy who at this point in his career, he spends a lot of his offensive possessions spaced about 27 feet from the hoop. John Collins is still one hell of a lob catcher. And, the problem with John Collins in Utah was he was too damn productive last season. I don't even remember all the injuries they came up with to make sure he didn't play, but seriously, they limited him to 40 games last year. He played less than half the schedule. He played in 70+% of their wins. They won. They didn't win a lot, but they won too often with John Collins in the lineup, and he was a reason. Like they had to get rid of him. They couldn't have him on the roster. They might win too much with him.
They got fined for protocols. I can't remember. Was he the reason they got fined, or was that something else?
Right. Come on, dude. They had him, they had Sexton, they had Clarkson, they had Markkanen.
Yeah, it goes back to Austin Aegis' comments a month ago when he got hired, when he said we're not going to manipulate lineups anymore. And people took that as they were going to try to win. What it really was they're not going to stop sitting. They're going to stop sitting guys and just not playing guys who are on the roster. They're going to play young guys and see how it goes. And we've seen over the last month, they moved on from Colin Sexton, moved on from Jordan Clarkson, now they moved on from John Collins. It's very clear what the motive is.
Okay, so that brings the question.
Guys minutes to play.
Are they going to move on from Lauri Markkanen?
That's the question that you're hearing a lot of. I would say I don't think it will be immediately, because I don't think that, just logically, selling low on Markkanen doesn't make much sense. I think if they're going to trade Lauri Markkanen, they need him in the lineup and they need him playing well. They need him, showcasing that he's a 7-footer who can do a lot of things in terms of scoring the ball. Last year was a bad year for him. It was obviously a wonky year, in and out of the lineup with all that stuff going on. But I think they can have Lauri Markkanen in the lineup, and they're still going to be the 15th best team in the Western Conference this year.
He also has 4 years and $196 million left on his deal.
Yeah, I think he's got to rebuild his value a bit to get to the place where they would like to turn him into asset-wise.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the Jazz have to meet the salary floor.
Sure.
And they have a $27 million trade exception that they're using basically to stay above the salary cap that was created in this. They could use it for a number of different things as the season goes along. They could still use it in free agency if they wanted. But I will say that, while I agree with you that I don't think Markkanen is getting traded in the next few weeks, I know that this is not necessarily what he signed up for. So keep an eye on Markkanen.
I hear you, but did Markkanen think they were going to be good soon? No, I agree with you on the keep your eye on him, though. But I'm not going to sit here and play violin music.
I don't think
for him.
that's what he thought they were going to do. I think that's the fact.
Sure
now, he may not be able to do anything about it.
He also made sure he was going to be on the team all last season, too. So, I think
remember he timed it to where he had
partially willingly signed up for this thing.
Yeah, he had a 1-year no-trade clause. But yeah, hey, Larry Markkanen, I think, might have the most games played of anybody now without a playoff appearances in terms of active players. If not, he's right up there. And I think you look at, they're very early in a rebuild, and again, they need Ace Bailey to pop because there's none of these other guys that flashed star potential. We'll see if a Cody Williams or one of these other guys might, but they haven't to this point. And they dumped all their vets. They dumped Clarkson, they dumped Sexton, they dumped John Collins, and they, for a net of no picks, they attached a pick to Sexton, which I'm confused still. And then they got a pick back for Collins, and then Clarkson was just a buyout. But they cleared it out to where they will be, if it was a 24 and under league, I think I don't know, because there's summer league teams not even that good. I was going to say, I think they'd be real tough.
The Thunder might win that one.
Probably by a lot.
The Jazz still have Yusuf Nurkic on their books. Who knows for how long? I would be quite surprised if he finishes the season there. So, all right.
I don't anticipate Kevin Love. I don't think Kevin Love will spend a whole lot of time in Salt Lake City.
I would agree. So Jalen Williams put up a 20-minute video on his YouTube channel, which is not that active. I don't think he'd put anything up since the All-Star break. And so I feel like by the time this pod comes out, it'll have more traction. But he basically goes through an explanation of what he went through with that torn ligament in his wrist during the end of the season. He suffered the injury on April 9th, right before the end of the season, when he dove for a loose ball and got tangled up with Devin Booker. And he said he felt like something tear. He could almost hear the tear. And he'd had a sprained ligament in his wrist for a while, and then it tore. And so it was a little bit known that he was dealing with a wrist injury because he would be icing his wrist sometimes during timeouts. But there's a lot of players dealing with injuries during the playoffs, and he was playing every game. And look, he was a little up and down, but it's the playoffs. It's his first deep run into the playoffs. You're expecting guys to be up and down. He definitely got some criticism for his struggles, but the story he told was fascinating about what he went through to stay on the court was pretty remarkable. He said that he was getting shots, pain-killing shots. He said lidocaine shots in his wrist that would, dull the pain before every single game, and including before some practices, because he wanted it to, even to be able to practice it. And he said that he had 28 or 29 pain-killing shots that he took throughout the 4 playoff rounds. And he talked about how some games, depending on how things would go, that the shots would wear off, and he would deal with, basically problems in the fourth quarters of the games because he was having difficulty with it. He talked about how he could barely sleep because his hand would really swell up and be very painful after the games when the shots wore off. He still shot the ball pretty good. His three-point shooting was the thing that suffered the most. He only shot 30% in the postseason after shooting, I think, me see what he shot in the regular season. He shot 37% in the regular season. And some of these quotes were pretty good. Let me get some of these here. So he said, my main hand, his shooting hand, it was on his right hand, was just not the same. My jump shots just felt different. He said, I didn't want to tell the world I was hurt. And so the world just ganged up on me about how I wasn't ready for the moment. I'm not sure that the world ganged up